everyone. Today I once again have a full stream planned, so I want to thank you guys for sticking around as an audience. And I'll start off like I normally do, talking about the AI. So I have Jeffrey running here. He's been running into the wall a lot, but that also means that he's choosing to move a lot. So that's somewhat promising, but also kind of boring in the same sense. But I picked around to find an environment where I had seen him move out of the light a little bit, a starting environment to see him move out of the light a little bit. And it turns out that this zero object environment was was this zero object environment had instincts that were eventually forcing him out of the light. So we should see that throughout the stream. I will keep him running, and as you can see over to the left, I have the AI also running. So Jeffrey's learning, and it is possible that his decisions will change over the course of this stream. But if you see how it's quickly going between beeps and bloops, that means that no changes are being made at the moment. So if you see a lot of blips, then that means that there's a possibility of a new change coming into play, but whether we will see that new change as something that's different is completely up to the AI. So we will see how that goes, and hopefully we'll be surprised over the course of the stream. So you may have seen from the title of the stream that I'll be talking about nature versus nurture. That's a psychological concept and somewhat of a philosophical concept. I will be talking about that later in the stream, but I wanted to start off by giving an update on the AI. So Jeffrey has been running constantly. I haven't shut him off. He's been running constantly since Wednesday, and obviously he had been running before that, but since Wednesday, like that's what I'm giving you the update on. Jeffrey has been running near constantly. I've been running him overnight, and just I want to get as much learning in as possible because, like I've said in the past, this particular task is quite massive, and it is also many times larger, many times more difficult and more time consuming than the ball drop task. So I want to get as much learning in as possible so that we can see the actual results of a long period of learning for each environment, not just for the entire task, because each environment itself is a new game. So I wanted to see what new things would happen. I did see Jeffrey eat a piece of food that seemed like he was locking onto it and finding it, but that was only in one situation, and then when he ate it, the situation changed and he didn't go for the next piece of food. So I don't know if that was a coincidence or if there was actually a decision. I would have to go into that specific environment, instinct and specific health battery ratio case, and find the instinct that was being used, and at the moment that would be too difficult to decipher due to the fact that I wasn't on my toes at the moment and didn't write down all the specifics of that environment. But I believe there was just one rock and two pieces of food. I'm not sure how much health and battery he had, so we will have to see what that looks like, and who knows, maybe it will happen in this stream. But I'm just putting it out there that I did see some progress, at least, even if it was slightly random. So hopefully we'll see some events during the stream. I saw in this environment before I had the stream started, Jeffrey ran outside of the light. And I know we've seen that before, but it is interesting to see the decision-making process once Jeffrey's into a more dynamic environment. So I just want you guys to keep an eye on him, just in the corner of your eye. It should be pretty obvious if something's happening because the colors will change. It'll catch your attention. Until then, I will continue talking about the AI. So in news of updates, I don't have any updates that I plan to add to Jeffrey anytime soon, because I finally have him working 100%. So these are not the reloader programs. These are just the driver and the boss program running side by side, and they are not crashing at all. I have seen the driver program stall out, but I believe that is just a computational situation. It's similar to what was happening in the past with my old computer, to where Pygame, the visualization engine that I'm using to make the picture here, cannot handle it needs its own designated space. So if something is taking too much space in terms of CPU, then Pygame will just conk out. So that's not a coding error. That's more of a visualization engine error, or a module error. But that is something I could go look for a new module that is more hardy. But at the moment, Pygame is getting the job done, so I'm going to stick with it. So and it doesn't seem like a good idea to try and fix that now that I have the actual code running smoothly. So I'm going to keep it here because it's getting the job done. But in terms of other updates, I am looking into adding a second gear. I know I talked about this a while ago, to the AI in as a whole. So the actual decision, the actual thought process, and the actual optimization of the sets of traits, I'm hoping to put in a new gear. So what I mean by that is that right now I have the genetic intuitive process, which looks through and it checks to see if there's differences, and if there are differences, then it says, are these good differences? So it checks that. But this process still stalls out every once in a while when it gets to the top of a hill, and I know we've explained this before. So what I'm going to do is add in a new step when it gets to a point where it's stuck, to where it makes the best or something better out of the best possible arrangement of the decisions that it has. So let's say there's 10 if statements that the AI can write out per program. So if it has a best program that has 10 if statements, or has less than that, but it calls for a certain amount of if statements, then what happens is the last if statement is the most important, because anything that has been said before can be overwritten by the last if statement. So what happens is, if the 9th if statement has something that's good, and then the 10th if statement cancels it out, then that whole decision is never seen. So what I plan to do is to take the set of traits that is the best already, and just have the AI go through and bubble sort the if statements based off of importance. And if you know coding, then you may know what a bubble sort is. I'm just using that somewhat metaphorically. It's not necessarily an exact analog to how I plan to do it. But I want the AI to scan through and say and see which order of the if statements is better. Now, I can't guarantee that this new order will be the best configuration, because if there's 10 if statements, and then you want to find the best arrangement out of every single arrangement, then that's easy statistics. That's just a 10 factorial. So that's 10 times 9 times 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. But 1 doesn't really matter. So it's a really big number. I can actually grab my phone calculator here and just give you an idea of that. So 10 times 9 times 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 equals 3,628,800 different configurations. Now, trying to go through that entire tree would just be stupid, because it would be a waste of time. Because if there's only one perfect configuration, or best configuration, because obviously even if I found the best configuration out of it, it wouldn't be perfect. It wouldn't be a perfect answer to the game. But if there's only one best configuration, and you're trying to find that in a pool of 3.6 million, then you have to go through all of them to check to see if every single one is better than the last. So it would be inefficient to try and look through all of them, but there are ways that you could get to a relatively better. Here we go. We get some movement. You could get to a relatively better configuration just by sorting through. So what I'm hoping to do is to have it set up so that it moves one if statement and sort of figures out what its importance is, almost giving the if statement itself a fitness score. So it uses that if statement, and then it finds out what the importance of it is, and then it's going to use that importance to figure out where it needs to be in comparison to the other if statements. Now, what I'm hoping will happen from these is that the if statements will become more harmonious, which means that the if statements will work better together than one if statement doing one thing and another if statement doing another thing. I want them to play off of each other. So if the one if statement is doing half of this and the next if statement does the other half, then you still get the full product. And what happens is sometimes you need two if statements to answer a question, or to give a command dynamically. So I'm going to apply that into what is the current AI for the ball drop program and see if it does better. Now, the ball drop program has been completely run through on the stream, so I will be using that as comparison. So we have the best program from the ball drop, and what I plan to do is, since Jeffrey is a little bit slower in the learning process and won't be showing much improvement physically on the stream, I will be running him constantly in the background and like off stream, and then giving updates on the Wednesday streams and right before the Saturday streams, and then I will run the ball drop program on the Saturday streams over the course of the entire hour, so that you can see the progress and the difference that the second gear makes. So I'm hoping to have that done by the next Saturday stream, so that gives me a week to work on that. I have made some progress already, but I didn't want to try and force it out for this Saturday. And I know that Jeffrey has been making some progress, so I wanted to show off that in today's stream. So he will be running for the entirety of the stream, and I will be moving on to my other topics. So for now, I will play a short ad, and I will be right back. Okay, I believe we're back. So today, like I said, we will be talking about nature versus nurture. Now, nature versus nurture is a relatively simple psychological concept, but it's not a concept. It's a debate. So it's two concepts and it's two things that people have fought back and forth with um, over the course of basically the entire time that psychology has been a something to debate about. So what the idea is that nature versus nurture. So I'll split it up. So nature, the first one is it's what you're born with. So nature is the genetic properties, the characteristics, and the physical traits that you're born with, and how that applies to influence your behavior. And so that's what this whole debate is about. That's it. The debate is about behavior. And nurture, on the other hand, is what you learn over the course of your life and how you are influenced by the environment that you are brought up. So, nature is, so just to recap, nature is the genetic and what you're born with, and nurture is what you are brought up with and how that affects it. So, this is a heated debate because there is not much agreement on what is the cause of people's behavior. There are some people that take the more pessimistic view that everything is out of our control and everything is down to nature. So, and I don't mean pessimistic in a bad way. I just mean that it's something where there's a faction of people that believe that life is not really in our control. That everything we do is based off of our genetic makeup and how and the different characteristics we got from our parents. So basically, what it means is that we can only ever be what our parents are. So that means that that's the whole idea of like a when a dad beats a son, then that son tends to beat his children, and this is a problem that persists throughout generations. But there are people that break the cycle, but then the nature argument for these breaks in the cycle is that the other parent's characteristics are influencing the new generation. So if you introduce a parent that is not violent and their parents were not violent, then you can break the cycle purely based off of genetics. And this also brings up the fact that so if you are playing by a strictly nature ideology, then a person can never truly change, no matter how much you counsel them and how much you teach them about the flaws in their ways. They will always be the same person on the inside and will always revert back to those instincts. So, nurture, on the other hand, is what I like to say the more optimistic view, not necessarily that it's better of a view, but that it gives hope. So, the nurture view is the ideology that people are a blank slate when they're born. They take on whatever they are basically sponges of their environments. So what happens is if someone is brought up in a good environment, no matter who their parents were and what kind of people they were, they will become good people. And if they are brought up in a bad environment, they will become bad people. So this comes into play when we look at people who are being raised in low income neighborhoods. So there is there's always the idea that it doesn't matter if your parents are good people if you are growing up in a less fortunate neighborhood, then you are more prone to absorbing those bad tendencies of drug culture and gang culture and all of these different quote unquote bad qualities of a person. So basically, the nurture side is that um, it's it gives hope because it also says that people have the ability to change later on in life after birth. So the nurture side of it says that you are in control, or at least that the environment is in control of you. It doesn't necessarily say that you are destined to be any specific person. So what this hope brings is the idea that someone can leave their environment if the environment is being malicious to their behavioral influence, and they can improve themselves by surrounding themselves with better behaviored uh, role models. So this is something that is often applied in these low income neighborhoods. So people will um, they will find a role model to strive for, and they will also people who are role models of these good behavioral concepts will um, will come into these neighborhoods and these environments and try to show that there is an environment greater than that outside that they can strive to enter. So this nurture idea is somewhat more optimistic because of that hope factor, but there is a dark side to it. So this ideology also insinuates that there is the possibility of being vulnerable to the environment. So this goes down to the ideas of Pavlov. So if you know anything about Pavlov, you know that he is not a friend of PETA, and that's PETA the organization, not the character from the Hunger Games. But basically, Pavlov had a bunch of experiments with dogs that went along the lines of basically saying that any organism can be trained to to respond to a stimulus, and that stimulus doesn't have to be related to what the response is. So basically, what he trained these dogs to do is he trained them to salivate at the sound of a bell, and whenever that bell was rung, so the way he did that was because he would ring the bell every time he was feeding them, and when it would get to the point that he wouldn't even have to feed them. He would just have to ring the bell, and they would start salivating because they would subconsciously take on the idea that they were going to be fed, even if after a long period of time they had not been fed from the bell. Now, you may say that's dogs. Dogs are easily trained, but the human subconscious is a very vulnerable. I don't know how to describe that as a physical form. So, the human subconscious is very vulnerable. So that means that if someone wanted to manipulate people, they could create an environment that would enforce behaviors and reward behaviors that benefited them, so that those people would get closer and closer to their ideal of a person. And this was seen somewhat in this is seen somewhat in cult culture. So when people are rewarded for supporting these cult leaders, then they almost become entranced, and they believe that that is the new normal for them, even if the ideas of the cult leader are crazy, and any person in normal society would immediately throw them out. If someone is isolated from the social media and from media in general, so they're not getting any input from the outside world, their behavior and their ideology is extremely vulnerable to whatever information they are receiving. And remember, this is just the nurture ideology. So the nurture ideology also brings up the idea that there are an innumerable amount of possibilities for your behavior, um, whereas the nature side of the argument claims that there is only one destined behavior for you, and everything has been decided just based off of your genetics when you are born. So this is something that is been debated because there is decent evidence for both cases. And so what I tend to view as the compromise for this whole argument is the idea that when you are born, nature defines a threshold for you. So let's say, and I have my paint window up here. Let's say that you have the when you're born, this is your behavior right here. So let's put a scale of behavior. So we'll make green up here, that's a good behavior, and we'll put red down here, and that's a bad behavior. So then, so let's just say from nature, from your genetics, you are put right here in the middle. So what I'm saying that nature provides you with is a threshold. So I'm going to grab a square here and put it like that. So let's say that, and this may start looking like a box and whisker plot, but just remember, this is psychology, not statistics. So let's say you are born right into this middle slot here, and this yellow box is your threshold. So if so then that is your range of possibility, and it's somewhat like well, I'll get to that in a second. So this is your range of possibility, and then after you're born, that's when nurture kicks in. So nurture is the idea that the environment can enhance or depress your behavioral your behavior in general. So let's say that you are someone who is born into a good neighborhood and is relatively, and your parents put you into a bunch of clubs, and you get to know people who are outgoing and have good status in society and are just general good citizens. Then you can move up here in this threshold, and you could even reach this maximum threshold. So let's say you become, but the thing is that with nature creating this threshold, there is a maximum of that threshold. So that means that there's one point where you become the best person you can be. But that doesn't mean you're necessarily the best person that anyone can be. So if someone, just based off of their genetics, is born with a starting point right here, and they have a similar threshold, we'll grab our square again, then you can see that because of this, because of nature starting them out at a higher point, then I didn't mean to change that color. Then they have a higher potential for being a good person. But they can also be a worse person because this threshold goes lower than the maximum of the of person one's number. So I'm going to number this 1 and 2 for convenience. So if person 2 is in a bad neighborhood and doesn't surround him or herself with an environment that is healthy and helps provide a better role model for their standing in society, then they can move down this scale and they can come down to this bottom threshold. So what I'm saying is that when with this idea of nature defining who you are and genetics encapsulating your range of possibility, this doesn't mean that someone can be born and automatically be better than you. Well, maybe at the point in time that they are born, they are slightly better than you as a person, but babies don't necessarily provide too much insight and generosity into society. They can't move, they can't talk. So just based off of your environment, you can become a better person. And also, remember, it's not a competition. If you are a good person and someone else is a good person, that doesn't necessarily, and someone else just does more charity than you. I mean, competing to do the most charity isn't necessarily a bad thing, so I wouldn't be putting that down. But charity and being a good person is just something that you should do. It's not something that you need to do and you should be the best at. But this whole idea is that there is a aspect of that hope, and so you have the ability to change yourself just based off of surrounding yourself with a better environment, but you also have to understand that are you are weighed down by what your genetics allow you to be. So the way I like to think about it is I don't think about it. I think, how can I make myself a better person? And so I don't try to compare myself to other people. And this may be the normal spiel for this whole idea, but I don't try to compare myself to other people, because then I am caught up in whether my nature is better than their nature. But the thing is, if I put myself in the best environment I can, then I can improve myself, and that's all that matters. Is that you have to be the best person that you can be, so that you can help society in ways that the world hasn't seen before. So um, that is the whole basic idea of nature versus nurture. And so this is a heated debate, but the way I view it is this compromised version, because I believe that both have merit and both have evidence, and so I probably should say some of that evidence. So what? I'll get a blank slate here. So there are very specific cases that show both sides of the argument. So and one of the best types of cases are twin cases. So twin cases are when you get people who are identical twins and they were put up for adoption because their parents weren't in a situation to take care of them. So what happens is sometimes when twins are put up for adoption, it's very hard to have twins adopted, because a lot of families, when they come to adopt a child, they're just looking to adopt one child. So it's hard for adoption agencies to keep both of the twins together. And so what happens is there are a lot of cases that psychologists are able to study on the idea that so what you get is you get two people who are basically identical, have the exact same nature because they're identical twins, but they are raised in two different environments. So what happens is you can, over the years, compare the behavioral traits and and things like IQ to see if the environment they were raised in has made them different people, or if they are more likely to be close to each other. So there have been cases that have supported both situations. So what happens, and what I don't have any exact numbers to quote here, but so let's say that one of the twins is picked up by a rich family, and they are put into the best schools, and they get the best food, and um, they get a lot of good treatment. They're around good people. Then these people, on tendency, have a higher IQ, and I don't know why I drew the arrow like that. They have a higher IQ. They tend to be healthier. Um, they tend to do better in school, and all these things. So and they tend to be better socially. So just social health and mental health. These people tend to do better as a whole. But what happens is when so then you have the other twin who doesn't get the same treatment. They are picked up by a family who maybe wasn't prepared to take care of a child, and they and their upbringing and the parents' upbringing has brought them to be maybe not the most caring parents. So then these children grow up to have slightly less IQs than their counterpart, slightly lower IQs, and they tend to be less healthy in terms of physical and mental health. But the curious fact is, the curious idea is that these numbers aren't so far away from each other. So yes, there is a positive correlation, or there is a correlation with the idea that these people who have positive upbringings have better statistics in terms of. I know it's hard to put statistics on knowledge and mental health, but in a overall analysis of their well-being, these people who are brought up, these twins who are brought up in a better environment tend to be more apt for society than their less fortunate counterparts. But if you take two twins who were whose birth parents were better people per se and were more intelligent and healthier people, then and compare them to two twins that their parents were not so fortunate, and that was the reason that they had to be put up for adoption, or maybe, then that's when we see the nature kick in, because although these twins have differences in their statistics and in their well-being, they are in a better standing. So the ones whose birth parents were better people tend to be better people in comparison to their counterparts, or in comparison to a set of twins that were born from parents who were not that great of people. So this idea of a threshold gives hope for people, because that means that they can change themselves and they can become better people. But it also brings up the idea that you are more prone to be what your parents are. So whether that's a good thing is for you to decide. And what you can do with knowing that knowledge is you can look at the aspects of your parents and you can decide, okay, that's something that I want to be part of me. And if you see something that your parents do that you don't personally like, then you can focus on avoiding that behavior. Because what I like to, because the way I like to look at psychology, and the reason that I love learning about psychology, is that if you know different psychological tendencies, then you can either allow them or stamp them out. So it's the whole idea of a magic trick is only impressive if you don't know what's going on. So if you know the inner workings behind psychology, then you can better enforce and reward yourself in order to make yourself a better person in general. So that's the idea that I live by, and that's something that I strongly encourage in people. Um, so that is the general idea. I'll give a quick summary. So nature is the behavioral aspects that are hard coded into your DNA. They are the genetic attributes that you obtain from your parents and from how you were born. And then nurture is the ideology that you can change who you are and you can be changed by the environment. Um, and the environment is role models, is physical environment. So if you're living in safety, in warmth, in good health, then these are all aspects that influence who you are, and even the country that you live in. Because I'm not saying that one country is better than the other, but there are different cultural aspects that come along with different countries. So these aspects may be um, maybe whether or not you're more of a individual person or whether you like to work in groups. These are tendencies that tend to be seen throughout different cultures, whereas Western cultures tend to be more individualistic, and Eastern cultures like China, for instance, tend to be more group minded, so they don't want to stand out. But it's not that they don't want to stand out. It's just that it's almost offensive in a sense for some people for people to not go with the flow of society. So these are all aspects that are seen in everyday, and if you do see these in everyday and you want to discuss them, the comment section is open to your bidding. Um, but for now, seeing as I don't see any questions up on my screen, I will be moving on to the last section of the stream, which is the normal section that I've been doing on the Saturday streams, where I illustrate a random topic that I generate with my sheet of random words. So I will be playing a short ad while I get that set up, so I will be right back. Okay, I believe we're back. So, like I've done in the past, I have my sheet of paper here. You can probably actually see it this time because of the new better quality on the camera. So I will be illustrating whatever comes up on this sheet. If I see anything that specifically sticks in my mind as a repeat, I might skip over it, but we'll see how it goes. So the first number is 18, and that is a sprinkler, which we have not seen before. The second number is 23, which is fornicate. I like where this is going. And the third number is 10, which is super. So I'm gonna have to sort of work out how that's gonna work into a descriptive phrase. Let's see. So I'm just gonna play it safe and say that the sprinkler itself is super. So let's say that it's a large, powerful sprinkler, and I'm. Let's just see how this goes. So we have a sprinkler, and judging by the fact that most of my other drawings have ended up looking at least slightly phallic, I'm just gonna assume that the fornication will just flow into this, and that sounds terrible. But I have tools. I have technology. Why am I doing this? Oh God. Okay. So I will fill fill these in. There we go. That is a sprinkler at the moment, and it has a torque, and it has a force, and it sprays water. And so you get the picture. So now if a sprinkler were super, then if you've ever seen a super soaker, you know that they are more powerful than a normal soaker. So I would imagine that a super sprinkler would be able to pump several gallons per second onto the grass. Now this would be slightly impractical unless you were trying to put out a fire on the grass, or perhaps if the grass were aliens and they were allergic to water. Now, if they were allergic to water, they've come to the wrong planet. But let's leave that up to their own leaders' ideologies. I don't want to play into interstellar politics. So we have our sprinkler here, and we can probably do some thermodynamics here. So we have a rate of mass flow, which is also related to a volume flow. But if you know the density of water, then you can assume what the volume flow is based off of the mass that's flowing through, and the pressure and whatnot. But actually, density is a function of temperature and pressure, volume and pressure. Who knows? It's not like I'm in that class or anything. So we have a rate of flow, and we're saying that this rate of mass flow is equal to, let's say, 100 kilograms per second. Now you can work out the volume of that, and if you do, in the comments, I will be sure to shout you out just for going through the extra effort. So we're getting 100 kilograms per second flowing out of this spigot, and that would definitely be super. So what's going to happen is we're going to have to beef up the exit hole here with a little extra piping, and so we're getting, I'm not sure why I'm using wood, but I think it gets the job done. And so this whole spigot would have to be powerful enough for the rate of flow, and obviously down below we're going to have some sort of pump system down here, this is a pump. And so we have some work in, that is rate of work in, going into the pump, and then so that is flowing and pushing water upwards. So if you have water flowing upwards, then there's a change in the height. But what tends to happen in a pump is that the change in height in the actual pump itself is negligible to the height that it is actually moving water, so it becomes irrelevant in terms of an energy balance. So we have this super sprinkler that is fornicating. So we could work with that. So if you you could probably put seeds of grass in here, or perhaps some sort of pollen for plants, and it could use that to spray it out. But I don't think that's what you guys are looking for. So I think that we're going to have Mrs. Sprinkler over here, and she is going to have 2 circular spigots. So yeah, okay, I think we're done here. But I think that's a finished product if I've ever seen one. So I just want to point out that you'd have to also have a super pump. So we'll give this pump a cape. just so that the energy balances would work out. So if you have a super sprinkler, fill that in, and a super pump, then it can be it will be perfect for all of your sprinkler fornication fantasies. So I want to thank you all for watching, and I will be posting this picture on Twitter to confuse all of my friends. Um, so, like I said, I will be working on that update to the AI over the next week, while at the same time running Jeffrey here. I have my TV set up as a second screen, so it's easy for me to keep an eye on the little bugger while I'm working on other things. But I will be definitely making improvements to the AI. Hopefully, they will be improvements. I'm not sure if it will make any relatively make any relevant changes to the speed or efficiency of the decision making and changes in decision making process. But we will be seeing that whenever I finish the update. So that's what the beauty of this channel is. You get to see all of the testing and all of the comparison um, of the different versions of the AI. And so now that I'm getting into an update of something you've already seen, you will be able to compare that to the past videos. But I won't force you to go back and watch. I'll probably be pulling up the best program from the past running and using that for comparison. So, like I said, I want to thank you for watching. I will be back on Wednesday with another AI update. I'm keeping that short and to the point unless I have something to talk about for 45 minutes, and then I will definitely talk about that for 45 minutes. But I think that we have had a fairly successful stream today, so I will be talking to you on Wednesday. Thank you for watching.